So, Rigged, this is 10 to 13, and it begins in Morocco, Casablanca, if I'm not mistaken.
Moroccan Roll.
Moroccan Roll is the title of the first episode. Dusty's here, and he's actually coloured in yellow and green.
His Norwich City colours.
He was that. He's a canary. Yeah, he was that colouring. For it wasn't a miscolour for this issue individually. It was that sort of colouring for the whole of the run, which is, I think he was like a sort of a beigey brown, wasn't he, in the G.I. Joe?
He was tan, definitely, in brown, tan and brown. I suppose. Was it too... I don't know actually why that was. I suppose it might have something to do with the colour palette or even like how it looked on page.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know.
Lots of greens in use in these issues. So what's going on here then?
Cheaper, that's why.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so they're meeting Farouk. Is it Farouk? Or Farouk. They're meeting Farouk.
Yes.
I always forget that guy's name. And he is kind of like basically going to give them information about Cobra. And he gets basically, he's kind of telling them we need to go and, talk about this in private. He gets shot in the neck with a dart from one of those blow guns.
Oh, the snake
and it's
charmer.
Concealed by a snake charmer. I think that's genius. And also a nice little tie into Cobra as well. So he kind of like, they're basically saying, oh, we'll get you to hospital. And he's like, no, I think I'm going to die because it's got Cobra venom in it.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you all I know now. So Lady J stays with him and like looks after him. And Alpine and Dusty make haste to chase the guy that did it. And then you see this cool little kind of like desert chase, even though the ore striker has had the wheels taken off it and put on bricks.
It's one of my favourite bits. It's been put up on bricks and the wheels have been taken off. It's like he's in the East End of London or something.
Yeah, it's like he's in Liverpool.
Yeah.
And
so what's transpired here is Farouk's letting on that Cobra and Destro want to take control of the world oil market.
Easy.
Yes. Let's just do it. Let's just do that.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Why are we doing
oil
podcasts?
Yeah, I don't know. This reminded me kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark-y.
Big time.
Kind of that bit where Indy is also in... he's in Casablanca as well, I think, isn't he?
Yeah.
And then the streets are kind of drawn in that way, and the guys with the swords, and it's very filmic. It's very filmic stuff.
It's all definitely of that time period where everything looked the same. It was like, well, we need to do a street in Morocco, so that way it's going to look exactly the same as everything else that we've seen prior to that.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, it's definitely got that feel to it, and the horses and everything like that, which is great. So they capture the guy, but. He takes cyanide.
Oh, yes, he does, yeah.
Kills himself.
Great panels here. The guys, they all do. They all take some cyanide pills. They're all keeling over. Hail,
very dramatic.
Hail, Cobra.
Very dramatic falls as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then, like, they get back and... Well, Lady J catches up with the guys and basically says, this is what's happening.
Yep.
And the next thing we know is the next issue, which takes us to where the Joes are attacking or being absolutely obliterated by fangs.
Yeah. Back of the issue on issue 10, I've got an advert for some Transformers toys.
Oh, sweet.
I've got Rodimus Prime and I've got Wreck-Gar.
Is it one of those cartoony ones?
It is.
Or is it one
it is a hand-drawn one.
They've drawn
yeah.
it. Oh,
yeah.
they're the worst best, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like, they're really bad, but there's a charm to them. Like that there's another one. I think it's Galvatron or like maybe even Prime and Megatron that's been hand-drawn, and God, it looks awful, but I love it.
So I was pretty much always a Transformers fan, but I never had any toys.
I was a Transformers fan, and I had the toys. I had a good amount of toys, and I loved them so much.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I sold them as well. I think they all went in the great exodus of the late 90s, early 2000s.
So I have one Transformers toy remaining, and it is, you'll know them, say it's one of the aerial bots, not Silverbolt, one of the other ones. Is there one called Air Raid? No.
Air Raid.
Might be Air Raid. But the reason I have him is because I had a letter printed in Transformers Weekly.
Amazing.
I wrote in basically saying I was a Transformers fan a long time ago. I hadn't read the comics for a long, long time. I think this is when, I'm going to say... So that ran for something like 332 weekly issues, I think.
Yeah,
and
massive.
I came back to it at around 230 maybe.
Yeah.
And basically wrote a letter saying, I haven't read Transformers for a long time. I don't know who anyone is. I don't know who you are. Because it was Dreadwing answering letters in the letters page.
Brilliant.
And basically he wrote a nice reply and they sent me a Transformer toy in the post.
That's great. So it would have been either Silverbolt, Air Raid, Fireflight, Skydive or Slingshot, right?
Yeah. I'm going to say Sky.
Any of them.
I don't know. Anyway. The next part of this is where it's going down now. Oh my goodness!
I love oil rigs in comics.
They're a great.
Like, have you?
Yeah.
Do you read the modern comics? Do you read like the silent option and stuff like that?
I have it, but I haven't read any of it yet. Is it a
I won't
4-issue
spoil
series? Because I've
Might
got
be more than that.
I've got number 4. I've got them all, but I was waiting till the last one came out to read it. However, I am about, I'm going to say, 20 issues behind on Real American Hero.
Yeah, you need catching up then.
So yeah, so I've got them all. I'm looking at them over there in a box, but I don't know what I'm waiting for as well. Why am I waiting? So I think
get on it.
I think
Why are you doing this? Do it now.
I think what I wanted to do was do this read through with Ben of the Marvel series as a minimum,
right?
And then whether or not we carry on the pod, I don't know.
Oh, you should do. Yeah, totally.
I'll then carry on through the IDW stuff, but I'm worried that's going to take me a long time to get to. So what I might do is I might just start reading way ahead now and get through all that IDW stuff. But
do both. Do them simultaneously.
But anyway, you're saying that there's oil rigs in Silent Option.
I'm just such a sucker for oil rigs, and as well, like, there was a Call of Duty campaign that required you, I think, like Modern Warfare 2, maybe one of the Call of Duties, where you infiltrate an oil rig from below through, like, you exit a submarine and you're with this group of guys on like just this, like, these little mini subs, and then when you get to the oil rig, you have to infiltrate it. And my God, it was like all of my dreams come true. I don't know why I'm so besotted with it, but when I see oil rigs and like the tactical battle platform, my God, I had that as a kid, and that's probably, I've just worked it out. There's the therapy session. Like, it was because of that I loved oil rigs so much in military situations.
And we've got one right here. We've got fangs, loads of fangs attacking this oil platform.
It's so Jeff Senior, isn't it? And the visuals here.
It's every panel, and I think I've worked it out. There's two things going on here. Number one, Steve White is a massively underrated colorist, or he might not actually be underrated because he might well be rated, but the colours here just bring Senior's art, which is amazing, into another league, and no one quite draws explosions or weapons firing quite like Jeff Senior.
No, because they're all so different. Every explosion even has different colouring to it.
Yeah.
Like, you look at the Suicide Jockey comment when he's talking about that fang in like the second panel of maybe the second or third page. It's third page.
Yep, Suicide Jockey. I'm taking evasive action.
Yeah, you got two explosions by him. Both of them are completely different, and it's way more dynamic. You've got the flash from the gun of the fang as well, which is bright yellow, and it's just beautiful. You're right, totally amazing.
And like you mentioned, it's hyper violent stuff. I mean, there must be a lot of people biting the dust here.
Yeah, they've even used Joe Green shirts in this one, haven't they?
Yeah.
To give us some, I suppose, good guy death as well as all the bad guys strung around.
And then we get the twist at the end. Civilian-looking helicopter lands in, because the Joes have now taken back control of this oil rig. And who should come out of the helicopter? No another.
Destro.
Yeah. And he's now basically taking the Joes up for piracy on the high seas, because it turns out that this is his oil rig.
And that's how you take over the world's oil market.
Yeah.
It's the following story as well that I really like, in that utilises the news perspective. Yes. Where you've got, like, almost like narrating a little bit of the story via the news report, which has been done quite a few times, but I do like that. Kind of,
I guess famously in Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
But I think, is that supposed to be Angela Rippon? It looks like Angela Rippon has been represented possibly as this newscaster.
Who was the woman who was on one of the early morning, like, ITV shows back in the 80s?
Yep.
Anne something?
Yeah, actually it looks a bit like her. Anne and Nick, wasn't it?
Yes. Anne Diamond.
Anne Diamond,
Nick Owen.
there you go.
Anne Diamond. I always imagined her as this particular newscaster.
Yes.
But that's a good call on Angela.
Maybe.
That is a good shout on Angela. Anyway.
Yes, so more great Jeff Senior action. Like you say, less action based, but more kind of a lot of talking heads. Quick Kick gets some quality action here.
I love Quick Kick as an Action Force character.
Yeah. I like the fact that he's just got 3 ninja throw-ins, well, not ninjas, throwing stars.
Yeah, the shuriken on his sash.
Yeah, on his sash. Amazing.
It's so good. I always found Kev did a really good Quick Kick. I loved Kev Hopgood's Quick Kick.
Yes.
But anyway, he helps obviously the Action Force team have been captured by Destro and being held not hostage, but prisoner because obviously they illegally attempted to take over his oil rig.
Yeah, I guess trespass and assault.
Yeah. So he, Quick Kick has obviously gone in silent weapons expert to kind of basically break them out without anyone knowing, but they don't really do that very well, do they?
No. And is this where also Action Force has to step down?
Yes, so that's why Quick Kick's gone in. He's kind of off the books as well. And you've got this guy called Elwyn Jones, who's like a Welsh MP who's against Action Force. He's just been like he's got this real like boner for Action Force.
He's got a beef, man. He's got a deep-rooted beef.
He's got deep-rooted beef. Sounds like a vegan alternative, doesn't it? Anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, big time. And you're right, Action Force aren't allowed to really do anything, but they get away, and Destro's like, well, PR. You look like idiots, and I get away with it. So this is one of the reasons I like this particular story arc, and I'll say it now because Cobra end up with the upper hand, and it's not often that. I know that there's a lot more of the overarching story to go, but this is effectively as an arc. Cobra wins. And as a kid, I feel like the UK kids were given more kind of rounded storylines. Like sometimes the good guys don't win, and sometimes the bad guys win. And that is something that it's always like in the American stuff. There's always this kind of like USA wins it all the time because we're the best, and it just. We actually owned our faults a little bit in the comics.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good summary. Another cool advert at the back of issue 13. It's a Matchbox Super Trucks, and it's a little Matchbox monster truck, and this is free when you buy some packets of wagon wheels.
Oh,
you get wagon wheels in the
wow.
States or not, or are they a UK thing?
I'll have to double check. I don't think they do, but that does sound like something that would be an American thing, and then we adopted it.
Right.
But I don't know. That's something that I've, like wagon wheels. I used to love them, and I'm surprised that's never really been prevalent in my head. But no, that's the first time I've heard of them for a long time.
Okay,
so probably not.
Basically, you had to claim your super truck. You had to collect 5 special multi-pack wrappers and send them to the address shown on the pack, together with 30p's worth of stamps. There you go.
Oh, the Americans are like going, what?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
What are we doing now?
Special mail or sendaways.
Well, apparently, and I've just done a mini bit of research, but it's a snack food in the UK, Australia, Canada, and other Commonwealth countries, and the Republic of Ireland.
Okay.
So I don't think they made it to the US, but they've made it to Canada.
Right. I'm going to go out tomorrow and buy a packet of wagon wheels. I've got a hankering for some.
Oh, man.
There you go.
Sorry, I'm just really upset that I'm not going to be involved in that.
That's fine.
I'll buy some real wagon wheels. So for me, Rigged obviously was one of them, but my other kind of standout was the crossover with Transformers, and that's kind of Ancient Relics, which was in Transformers 125, but then also continued in 24, 25, 26, and 27 of the Action Force weekly comic.
Yep.
And that, for me, was just one of those WTF moments as a kid. It was like two worlds colliding. What the hell is going on? This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I was a kid who loved crossover events. I loved it in like the Marvel cartoons when, specifically with Spider-Man, you would get the Punisher turning up in the 90s cartoon, or you'd get the Hulk appearing in like the 80s with, Thor, or you just get all these like different random crossovers. But I was always like, why isn't this done more often? Why are we not seeing this happen all the time? Yeah. And it made no sense to me that these universes weren't being done, even if it was a what if scenario, which Marvel dealt with beautifully on their side of things back in the day and to this day. But you could always have like a separate universe for this stuff, and they kind of attempted it, but I guess the sales weren't there because it didn't continue, or it would always be halted.
So for me, first of all, I didn't bind the Transformer issue.
You son of a
yeah, because I never had it, and I didn't realise, because I was buying Action Force and I wasn't buying Transformers, so I had no idea that I needed to buy that issue of Transformers.
Mate, that cover though, it's Flint's face on that Transformers cover. That is just the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Have you got it at hand?
No,
by
I don't.
Any chance?
I don't. I actually have. I'm in the process of trying to collect each single issue of the Transformers Weekly. I'm missing about 3 or 4 issues, I think, and then I'm going to hard bind that in 6 volumes. But no, I don't. I haven't. I probably have that issue, but I've never read it.
Well, just for our audience and listener viewers, if you can get hold of, or if you can get online and look at issue 125 of the Transformers Marvel comic, please look at the few things I'm going to mention here. One, Flint's face is the funniest drawing of Flint's face I've ever seen.
Right.
Then you've also got Bazooka, who's firing his bazooka, but at a very specific part of the Transformer's arm that does seem to do absolutely no damage whatsoever. Or, you know, it's like clipping the top of his arm, don't aim at his chest or his head or anything. Just aim away from him and try and miss him, Bazooka. And then Airtight is using his vacuum cleaner to fire some sort of red pulse ray, which I just think is just amazing. And Barbecue firing flames at the Transformer, which again was in the Action Force comic, he was more of a firing flame guy than he was a put flames out guy, wasn't he?
So the power of Google has enabled me to view this cover, and I agree with everything you've just said.
Good, then we can move on.
But for me, the first, I'm looking at the cover of issue 24 of Action Force, which was my first introduction to this crossover, and it's got Flint, Scarlet, Wild Bill Bazooka, and a Megatron with half his face missing. Now, at this point in time, I wasn't reading Transformers, and I'll be honest, I was pissed off. I was like, what are these big robots doing in my realistic Action Force comic? And I was not happy.
Well, I don't know. I feel like it's a Marmite thing, Transformers G.I. Joe, isn't it? I think that's why it never really catches on.
Well, now I'm like, yeah, cool. This is a cool story. I'm all down for it. But as a kid, as a mini chief, wasn't my bag. But that has changed, mainly because I wasn't reading, so I didn't know who this Alpha Centurion dude was. And I didn't know what was going on with Megatron and Grimlock. I knew Megatron and Grimlock, but I had no real understanding of what was happening. Yeah,
because again, we're brought into it in an odd position, aren't we? As well, we missed that kind of initial issue.
Yeah,
and it's almost like I must admit, at the time, I did feel like something wasn't quite right. And I'm like, why all of a sudden are they running out of a thing being chased by a Transformer? Like, you're right, there was that element of it, because I didn't have the Transformers comic as a kid. I didn't have that 125 as a kid.
Right.
But I was still just blown away at the fact that, and I just thought, the newsagent had obviously missed one out, or I'd missed a week or something. That's how my mind worked back then. It was always my fault, you know.
I don't want to be sacrilegious or anything, but I don't think Jeff's art here is potentially as good as what I'd seen previously. I don't want to wax lyrical about everything that's in here, but for some reason, I don't know. Some of these pages I'm looking at, I don't think they're his best work.
I know, I'll agree with that. I think there's elements of it where it's a little bit sparse. It's not as filled. Like some of the, he's using a lot of kind of block colours, and it's all very, very simple paneling stuff, isn't it? It's all very basic.
Yeah.
But there are some really nice parts.
Oh, definitely.
There's some beautiful kind of spreads and some like big. I think like part 3 of the Ancient Relics in the Action Force comic. You've got a really good scene where you've got Megatron and Grimlock battling. You've got the helicopters all converging, and you've got like Centurion, and they're all kind of like meshed. They're all coming together in this kind of like crazy fight, and I did quite like that.
Yeah.
I've noticed also we're not really talking about what happens in it, but I don't think we need to. It's basically Transformers meet with Action Force,
and there's a big scrap,
and that's it pretty much.
And on the back of one of the covers is another. I keep bringing up adverts, so I hope.
No, it's great. I love the adverts.
This is an advert for Battle Beasts.
Oh, that's our next episode.
That's
our next main episode is Battle Beasts.
Battle Beasts. They battle for fun.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly. And firewood water, baby.
I think I didn't have some. My friend had some. Now, I don't want to spoil what happens.
Nuts.
Actually, no, because this is going to be an Easter special. So hopefully the listeners have already listened to the Full Force podcast.
The 5-hour Battle Beasts episode.
This is just a recap of what you will have discussed. They had little figures with little hologrammy rub things, kind of like the Autobot Decepticon rub things. What are they called?
Rub signs.
Rub signs, okay, yep. And you rub it, and you either get a fire, a wood, or a water, and it's like rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, fire beats wood. Yeah. Wood beats water. Water beats fire. That was the advert.
So, is it? Because here it actually gives a bit more detail. Fire burns wood. Wood floats on water. And water puts out fire. I can understand water winning by putting out fire, and I can understand fire burning wood to win, but wood floating on water? How does that beat water? Take that, water. I'm floating on you.
It's like being caressed with a natural yogurt.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
It's not really a battle, is it? Like
No.
the fire is pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Water's powerful. Wood.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna float on you for a bit and
Yeah.
chill out.
Yeah.
Just relax
Take
for a
that.
bit.
But I mean, they look cool. It's got little silhouettes of the figures. I didn't, like I say, my friend had a couple, but I was never really immersed into the world of Battle Beast. But maybe I'll look for some on eBay.
Oh, totally. They're great. And we get into some details with it, but it kind of still exists to this day in a weird sense, or in a spiritual sense, with the Beast Saga line in Japan.
Okay.
But again, you can listen to all of the details on the next main episode of the Full Force.
Do it.
So.
Sounds good.
Well, what about your standout then, Chief? What was the next standout for you?
The next standout for me is a couple of single issues that I like. I mean, let's briefly, before I move on to those, I want to just touch on issue 18, which actually features a Grant Morrison short quick kick story, which introduces, do you say Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi?
I say Shang-Chi,
okay,
but I don't know. I don't know what the correct pronunciation is.
Let's go with Shang-Chi, which is a Marvel character who was master of Kung Fu, who was going to form part of the backup strips. So rather than just reprint those backup strips, they had a weird kind of little introduction story where the two of them know each other to kind of segue that strip in, which I thought was quite cool. And obviously Grant Morrison, this was early days of Grant Morrison. He'd been writing the Zoid stuff and then this for Marvel UK, and then I guess he would go off and do his US stuff.
I think it's really nice, and I must admit it made me want to care about Shang-Chi. I'm saying it now. Yeah. Shang-Chi, and also Quick Kick he was one of the first figures I owned. Flint and Quick Kick were the first two I owned, so Quick Kick has always had that kind of close to my heart as a character. Yep. So I was gutted when he died in A Real American Hero. Yeah. Spoiler alert. Yeah,
spoilers.
Do you want me to cut that out?
No, that's fine. Leave it in. And that comes, and I don't particularly want to discuss this story, but that comes off the back of the previous 4-issue arc, which is called Cold Comfort. And
brilliant!
That is actually a really good story because it's a bit more of a mature story with Quick Kick trying to hunt down his old friend who he assumes has been captured by Cobra, or a sect of Cobra. And this was actually quite clever. Actually, I am going to discuss it now. I said I wouldn't, but I'm going to discuss it.
Do it.
Michael Ank, who was an old stunt driver, stunt performer, friend of his, has gone off into the snow. I don't know where it is the Himalayas or somewhere.
Himalayas. It's usually the Himalayas.
Usually the Himalayas if it's snow and mountains. And this is quite clever because they're actually introducing a whole new branch of Cobra, who are, a bit more fundamentalist and a bit more hardcore. And he hasn't been captured. He has actually been turned and is as a member of this cult. And really good stuff here, really good back and forth and moral dilemmas. And also is a good story because it introduces Steve Yao as an artist who would go on to be a real mainstay on 2000 AD.
He's amazing, Steve.
Yes.
I'd love to get him on the show as well, or on your show, please. Can you get Steve on the show?
I'll see what I can do, and then I'll palm him off onto you.
Well, it gives me less to do. If you just do all the ones I want to hear, then that's perfect.
I don't think he does that many cons anymore, but I know a con I was at, and one of my friends actually got a Quick Kick sketch from him at one of the conventions. So
yes, and honestly, Steve does brilliant Quick Kick as well. I must admit, I love the logo as well for the Cobra, like the two-headed Cobra logo.
But I mean, that's a good story, worth tracking down, definitely. And then the other, I like a couple of these single issues. I like issue 23, which is called Gas Mask?
Gas Mask with a QUE.
Gas Mask with a QUE, because this is Brett Ewan's art, who was a big Judge Dredd artist and did Bad Company for 2000 AD, and just kind of another issue that kind of highlights the individual Cobra soldier. He's an old friend of Heavy Metal's. He's gone a bit rogue and he's on a suicide mission. He's going to kill everyone. He has to be talked down. Nothing revolutionary, but I really like the way that's done. And another single issue, which is issue 32, which features Barbecue and Airtight.
I knew you were going to say this one. This was also one of my kind of honourable mentions, the Runaway Train one.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so again, this is actually Anthony Williams on pencils, who would again be a big artist for 2000 AD, especially on Sinister Dexter. And yeah, I don't think this is not Cobra involvement, is it? It's just some criminals have hijacked a train, and Flint is flying the Dragonfly, and I think Wild Bill's flying the other one. They drop off Airtight and Barbecue, and they use their skills in their respective areas to kind of halt the runaway train.
It's really cool, and again, it's I love the fact that Airtight and Barbecue are kind of duoed up all the time. Like, I feel that they came out like in a similar time. They just have like they're almost like, because they're not kind of directly infantry based. They're not like military as it kind of, you know, the standard version of that. They're almost like kind of put together and like, you guys go over there.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're both really cool operatives, and in this particular issue, I think it enhanced them as characters so much, having this particular comic.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you've got a guy who is basically he's got nothing to live for, who's taken over this train, and he's just gonna, like, you know, I suppose, make a name for himself, kill him and everyone on board at the same time, and they end up kind of getting on the train in like classic action fashion, being dropped by a dragonfly. Barbecue has to put out a fire. The danger of the fact is the container that it's in is it's going to be a very dangerous situation if it does break out. So obviously Airtight is there to deal with that. And then they both break into the actual cab of the train or the driver's area. And that's where they meet this guy who's got a gun to Barbecue, but then Airtight comes through the window and grabs his gun. And then the dude's like, well, what are you going to do? You're not going to kill me, so I'll just jump out of the train. And then they're like, right, well, what are we going to do then? We better bail. We'll bail for it. We'll jump out. They jump out and save the other driver on the train, the other guy involved. And it stops of its own volition and doesn't crash. So it's just a nice, cute, like you say, contained story. It's very, very cool.
I don't think it's the best art we've seen in the series so far, but I mean, it's the storytelling.
I do think it's interesting, though. I think there's a lot of personality in the features of each character, though. I think there's a real like stylistic approach with this particular artist, isn't there?
All the characters are quite expressive, aren't they?
Yeah, really exaggerated in certain aspects.
This is actually another. You're very good at doing segues that you don't know about. So.
I'm a G.
It's an Action Force pop quiz. It's an Action Force pop quiz. More intelligence profiles. So Kurt Schnauer is Airtight. Do you want to go primary and secondary, or I can give you primary and you can attempt a secondary?
You're going to hate me because for one, there's a reason I love this character. Born in West Germany, right?
Yep. I
was born in West Germany, so instantly I had this connection with Airtight, and I knew. And the other thing was, my dad was in the forces; he was in the RAF, and I would talk with him about these characters, and we would have he would fill me in on like real military stuff, and he was always interested when things popped up, including nuclear, biological, chemical warfare, which is the NPC thing, which is his primary military specialty.
It is, and
I think like weapons tech was his other one, something
Correct,
like that.
Yes, weapons technician, yes.
But I remember that, again, vividly, because my dad was, we'd have conversations about this stuff, and he would say that he would tell me stories about when he had his NBC suit, and it was a funny story of, I think his mate, the way that they were designed was that you couldn't really take them off fully without spending hours putting them back on. So when they needed to go to the toilet, they got caught short in the middle of nowhere, he would shuffle this thing down but not take it off properly, and his mate was in such a rush, or he was so drunk, I can't remember which one it was, that he shuffled it down but then did a crap and it went straight into the to the suit that he was wearing. Nice. But anyway, that's a story for all you guys out there, and that's why I know so much about Airtight.
Cool. I'm going to give you another couple. So, like you mentioned this earlier, actually, Mr. Fairborn is actually David, and in G.I. Joe, what is he? Dashiell.
Yeah, Dashiell R. Fairborn.
We still got the R for Flint here, but it's David. Primary
warrant officer. He's infantry.
He is a warrant officer. Yeah, he is infantry, and his secondary.
He was a helicopter pilot.
He was a helicopter pilot, and when I wrote these down, I was like, he doesn't fly no helicopter. And in the issue we've just discussed, I actually mentioned he is flying one of the helicopters.
He's all up in the dragonfly, isn't he?
All up in that dragonfly. So now we've got file name unknown.
Okay.
I'll give you all three of these.
Is it Snake Eyes?
All three of these next ones are file name unknown.
Okay.
Yes, it is Snake Eyes. Primary specialty?
Hand-to-hand combat. Instructor.
His secondary is hand-to-hand combat instructor.
Oh, is he infantry again?
He is infantry. Man, you're good at this.
Sorry, that's wrong.
Well, it wasn't wrong, but I mean, it's better than I was expecting. If you'd have asked me these without me knowing, I would have got 0 for 0. So you've got another two unknowns here.
Oh, God.
You want to hazard a guess at who?
I'm trying to think who's unknown. It would be Cobra?
Yeah, Cobra Commander.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to guess his primary and his secondary?
I'm never really good with the I vaguely remember his... Like, there was some connection with his pistol because it was, like, experimental or something. That's all I remember.
Okay, you are good. Experimental weaponry is his secondary.
Oh, okay.
And intelligence is his primary.
I didn't know the primary.
Okay.
I knew there was something experimental in there.
And the last one then is Destro.
Well, what?
Yeah, go on, say it. I could hear the first bit.
Well, it's weapons manufacturer.
Weapons
but
manufacturer
I don't know if that was...
is his primary specialty.
Oh, thank for that.
And secondary?
I wasn't sure if that was on his card. Oh God, it's something ridiculous.
It is something ridiculous.
It's something that isn't. It's something that isn't. You don't usually expect.
It's not a
because
skill.
It's not a. It's not a. No.
It's not a skill.
Hang on, bear with me. Is it? No, I've lost it. Sorry.
Terrorist.
Oh yes, yes. I knew it was something dumb.
You went to terrorist school.
You see, what you might notice here is I'm not very good with Cobra, but I'm very good with Action Force.
Well, there's no more. So you've completed. I'm going to give you a pass. Tick.
Oh, brilliant! Thanks. Awesome.
Okay. Any stories you would like to discuss that we haven't already covered?
Gunpoint's brilliant.
Yes.
I love Gunpoint, which is that one where the Crimson Guard gets found out in the school, and he then holds them all hostage, and then Footloose is going to snipe him, but then Flint goes, "No, don't."
Yeah, it's issue 28. That's a good one. I think that's Anthony Williams again on art.
And then the kid talks him down.
Yeah, that's
or
right.
Like,
yeah,
he basically tells him he's a dick, and he wouldn't like him if he was his dad. And he goes, "Oh," and he starts crying, and then.
Yeah.
But then, what was really powerful about that story is the last panel, where the kid is then haunted by this Crimson Guard holding a gun to him.
Yeah, it's a bit morose, isn't it? It's a bit.
Yeah, but again, very good standout story to kind of talk about.
Yeah.
Doppelganger is a brilliant arc. Yeah. Like, it's just so much fun.
I'm not a massive fan of that one. I mean, no, saying I'm not a fan is not telling the true story. I do like it, obviously, because I like all the stories in here, but I wouldn't have it anywhere near the top. Strange that.
Well, that's why it's here. I think that's why it's here in the kind of. I'm really more making an honourable mention,
right.
Shall we say?
Okay.
And I liked it because it was he just seemed to keep going, and it was like they should have dealt with this by now.
Yeah.
This should be sorted out, and they kept getting away, and it was like almost like chase and suspense, and I did quite like that. And then the little twist as well.
Some good water moccasin action in that though.
Yeah, Moccasin and Moray,
yeah.
they get a good
combo,
seeing
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
They get a good seeing to in that issue. Yeah, and I think I think that's pretty much on all. I've got a one that stands out to me, not necessarily in a bad way, but a bit goofy, is the Sunday Drivers one, where you've got Bazooka and an Ore Striker going through a mall
and
chasing the Dreadnoks, yeah. And I just it's it's wacky, it's bonkers, it's fun, but it's definitely not one that it's memorable, I suppose. You know.
I think we probably need to discuss the other main crossover with the G.I. Joe comic, which is kind of issues 37, 38, which are drawn by Brian Hitch, who would obviously go on to become a massive superstar artist, did obviously the Ultimates at Marvel, and then did a truckload of stuff, The Authority with Warren Ellis and Mark Millar and all that kind of stuff. But that acts as a silent interlude, kind of prologue and epilogue. Yeah,
bookends, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting because you kind of get Storm Shadow at the end. Well, the first part is it shows how Scarlet came to be captured by Storm Shadow and taken to the Silent Castle, which is never done in... I don't think it's ever done in the G.I. Joe. It's only referenced in a few panels in a subsequent issue. But here you actually see Storm Shadow. He's come into London. He's actually captured Scarlet.
And somehow manages to do it with, I want to say, Snake Eyes is involved. He's one of the guys that's dressed up with his mask on, that's with her.
Yes,
and he ends up kind of getting smacked into the like the pool of water, and then like comes out all ready to go, doesn't he?
That's actually a really cool panel on that last page where it says prologue ends, and it's got an image of Snake Eyes kind of squatting with his Uzi.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah,
sensational stuff. And then the following issue in 38, because then we get the silent issue of the reprint of the G.I. Joe material, and then you get a confrontation between Destro and Storm Shadow up above on the ramparts kind of Castle Destro, or the Silent
Castle.
Sorry, yeah.
It is Castle Destro in the Action Force comic though.
Yeah. That's kind of cool because at one point, he's picked him up above his head, and Storm Shadow's picked up Destro, and he's about to, throw him off the top of this castle, and he just wants to know who killed the Hardmaster. But I thought that was a neat little way of kind of giving the UK readers a bit more background on what was happening in the US comic.
Well, what I found out after the fact was it wasn't so much that we're seeing what was happening in the US. We were just getting comics that worked with the continuity that they could then squidge in somehow, like, you know, ham-fisted in to kind of make it look like it was all one big continuity. But yeah, it was. I think it was more to do with that. What it did do was it then gave us a basis going into G.I. Joe, and then reading these stories and being like, oh wow, you know, like, and it was. I did have an oh wow moment reading Marvel Run for the first time, the G.I. Joe run, and I wouldn't say it was like. I never feel like one is better than the other. I never feel that way. I just feel like they're two separate things, but I have so much love for both of them. Yep. G.I. Joe, you know, I'd love G.I. Joe. Like, I love it with, you know, otherwise I wouldn't do a podcast about it, you know, and spend the majority of my life studying, researching, and doing all this crap, going to conventions. Like, what's the point? It's mental. Yeah, so when I read the G.I. Joe comic for the first time, it was like, oh, I see. That's why. Oh, I get it. Yep. So, like, you kind of unraveled the mysteries of what, you know, before you had no idea about.
Yeah. Before we give our verdicts on what our favourite covers are and our favourite artists and issues, in issue 22, there was actually prior to this, they did a reader survey. And the opening or the centre page splash of issue 22 was the results of it's called the Great Action Force Readers Poll. Results.
Amazing. I took part in that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice.
I voted.
Oh, it says in Action Force 14, 8 weeks ago, we instigated the Great Poll. So I was surprised at almost how few votes there were. So, for example, favourite artist, Kev Hopgood ended up winning it with 85 votes.
Yeah.
Jeff Senior 61 and Steve Yao 25. So that's only like, you know, 170 people voting. So not everyone who reads it is going to vote, but it seemed like a very low number to me.
I think it was more people were reading it than they were voting, and that's just I found that more so in like you know, fast forward to the future and you get like a Facebook poll, you got 3,000 people or over 3,000 people that like your page, and only 16 people take part in the poll. Right. So I think it's more it does highlight a low readership, and there's a reason why it didn't break the 50 barrier.
Yes.
But I totally agree with you. It's low numbers for this, and maybe they should have gone percentages.
Yeah, just to not highlight the, you know, I mean, favourite Cobra was always going to be Storm Shadow winning, 141 votes. Yeah. Zartan, 21, Destro, 13.
I was interested with Zartan actually getting a higher vote than Destro because Zartan wasn't seen as often.
Yep.
And also, have you noticed that the art for that Zartan that was used on the cover has been now used on the soles of the ASICS trainers?
Yeah, so I actually bought both pairs. I bought the Snake Eyes and the Storm Shadow ones. And you did as well.
Yeah, God, yeah.
But I
interviewed the designer.
Did you?
Anderson Blue. We interviewed him.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, about a couple of weeks before they released. Yeah.
Well, I sent them back. That's not where you thought it was going. I found them very uncomfortable.
Oh, that's a shame.
They rubbed on the outside of kind of just the ankle, just above the heel, in between the ankle. There was rub because I was like, oh, these are great. I was like, I bought both, and I thought I'll decide to keep one or the other because I can't justify £100 per pair. And I thought both came. I tried them on for like a week. Every night I would try them on in the living room, not wearing them outside. You know, for like an hour at a time, just wearing them around, just walking about, and then in the end I was like, I can't do it. So then I actually sent them both back.
That's such a shame.
What a bad ending.
Yeah. It is. I mean, mine are fine, but then at the same time, mine are still in the box. I did try them on, but they were comfortable for me.
Right.
Oh, mate, we must have different feet shapes.
Yeah. The last two I'm going to mention on this poll is favourite Action Force character. Snake Eyes 110, Quick Kick 30, Flint 16. And again, that kind of parallels the Destro one. Flint is the main hero here, but I know he's never going to compete with Snake Eyes, and Quick Kick's a cool character, but I thought he would have got more than Quick Kick.
It was the era of Kung Fu, though, wasn't it? Like, it was just like Bruce Lee was everywhere, and ninjas were cool, and yeah. And
then the vehicle, we've got Dragonfly with 60 votes, the Snowcat with 26, and the Sky Striker with 25.
I'm surprised the Mauler's not in there, but again, the Snowcat's seen a few more times at that stage, I think.
Yeah, that's it.
What about let's do our versions of those. Also the covers as well. The Storm Shadow got first, didn't he? Snake Eyes got second. So that's issue. Is it 12?
For the covers. So they had covers. They had issue 12, issue 11, and issue 14. So that was, like you say, the who is Storm Shadow cover,
Good cover.
who is Snake Eyes, and
Fire and Ice.
Fire and Ice, which is a snow cap blowing up with Quick Kick being launched out the front, which is a cool cover.
Awesome. That's from Cold Comfort as well, wasn't it? Or that kind
is,
of,
yes,
that,
correct.
That area.
So, all right, yeah, let's do our covers then. See, I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got 6 on my list, which I'm going to narrow down to a honourable mention, a runner-up, and a winner.
Nice.
So while I do that in my head,
I've got mine.
You go ahead and give us yours.
Okay, so honourable mention, or number 3, I have issue 26, a Mauler being crushed by I think Megatron. I just find that particular visual very iconic for the Action Force, even though again it's the Transformers crossover thing. But I remember seeing that and just being blown away by it, because the Mauler's gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful tanks ever conceived, and I thought visually it just looks stunning. Number 2, the runner-up, I have issue 18, and that's the wraparound cover that features just like them again. It's the Mauler. I might be giving away my favourite vehicle at this rate as well. It's another Mauler cover, but it's like mentally dynamic. It's like, who would have thought the Mauler would do like that? You know, like I can't even tell if it's either. I think it's coming down from a height.
I think it must be, yeah.
On a jump, coming down on the front left of its track, which would absolutely disintegrate any tank, I think. But it's also firing off like its ridiculous like missile, which has got the flaps have opened as well, which I just used to love seeing on like slow motion military videos where you see a missile come out of the launcher and then the flaps kind of like appear, like flip out. And obviously you've got the fangs on the other side of the cover, you've got Stonehenge in the background, and you've got Jay, Flint and Heavy Metal like all like on the more like, obviously Heavy Metal's driving it, but you've got Flint and Lady J kind of like not hanging on for dear life, balancing precariously, firing at fangs. It's mental, it's classic Action Force. I love it. It's brilliant. And my number 1 is probably going to be your number 1 as well, mate, I'm guessing. And that's issue 2. And that is the eel in the hallway with Snake Eyes. Eel with the candlestick in the hallway with Colonel Snake Eyes and the awesome Scarlet. And everything about it is gorgeous. The art, the line work is exceptional. The colour is exceptional. It's dark, but it's still vivid. Everything pops really beautifully with that kind of the light coming from the back, like the back room almost. There's a doorway in. And Snake Eyes looks amazing. And the eel looks amazing. And Scarlet looks amazing. Yeah. It's just perfect. Okay,
so my ones, I had difficulty splitting my honourable mentions, so I'm going to give 3 honourable mentions.
Bloody hell.
First off is issue 17 cover, which is Quick Kick and his buddy Michael Ank. The cover just says Jewel, and they're kind of facing off with flames and fire in the background. Just great composition, just really cool. I see that cover, I want to know what happens in that scene. And issue 5, which is Jeff Senior with the Dreadnoks on the motorbikes in the snow. They just look bad and mean.
Buzzer was a pretty big character in the Action Force era.
He was, yeah. Then I'm going to issue 46 for my last honourable mention, and this is Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes in the rain. Storm Shadow's pulling his bow back. It's a Brian Hitch cover.
And Snake Eyes is crouching, right? From my recollection.
Snake Eyes is crouching. I'm not so much a fan of Brian Hitch's modern art. I know I am in a very, very small minority there because everyone tells me I'm an idiot when I say that. I just don't like the way he draws faces. I don't think he can draw faces.
Hey, you can have your own feelings towards these things, dude.
But I love his Action Force stuff. I think this stuff is better. And I saw him at a con. In fact, it was back in 2012, I think, or 2011. It was Kapow in London.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, and I was there.
I got him. Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was at that one.
Cool.
Sorry, carry on.
I got him to sign some of these issues, and I actually said to him, I prefer your stuff from here, and we wouldn't have it. He's like, are you kidding? And he told me a story. He said he was 16 going on 17 when he was drawing this.
Bloody hell.
On his mum's kitchen table, and he'd have all his art out and he's drawing, and she's like, clear this table, I'm serving dinner now.
You are kidding me.
He'd have to just smush it all off the table as his Beans on Toast came, and he's I think you said he was 16, just about to turn 17.
How?
He said I didn't know what I was doing. He said, I'm drawing Action Force comics. Oh, incredible stuff.
That is the most mental thing I've ever heard in my life. I'd have given.
Crazy.
Oh, I don't. That's amazing. Hero.
Really nice guy as well. Really nice guy.
Hero.
And then I have got my runner-up as issue 2.
Oh, nice.
Which, for all the reasons you said,
it's gorgeous.
I've actually got my winner. It is actually issue 23.
Okay. Okie dokie. Is that the He's Mad one?
It's the He's Mad. So it's the gas mask issue. So it's a real close-up of a Cobra Trooper
sweating,
who's holding a can which says toxic on it, and he is sweating profusely. And it says, he's mad. And it just looks, I don't know, that visual is just really, really powerful for me.
Brilliant. It's terrifying as well. Airtight's going to be needed soon by the looks of things.
And barbecue, yeah.
Yeah, the duo. I have a cushion with both of them on it as well. They were always put together on things. It's crazy.
What did you think about so in the back of G.I. Joe there was sometimes postcards to the pit, the letters page. Here we had mail call, which was generally a random place in the issue, which was the same thing, readers' letters.
Yeah.
But this had something really cool, which was called Action Trade, where someone would write in, such as Stuart Gibson from North Cheam in Surrey, which is actually about 5 minutes down the road from me.
Mental.
And he says, wanted, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow with weapons. Swap, Destro and Crimson Guard with weapons.
Crazy.
So you could basically, it was a swap shop.
Classifieds, wasn't it, pretty much?
Yeah, it was a classifieds, yeah. But you'd see some really bad ones, like some dude would want, I want Snake Eyes and Cobra Commander, and I'll give you 2 Cobra Troopers.
I'll give you a broken airtight and no thanks. That was pretty cool. I mean, we've adopted the mail call thing on our podcast as well. That's all of the things that are mentioned in the cartoon or the comic we tend to try and steal for our own segments. But the mail call was also one of my favorite ever things as well. Just kind of reading other kids that are into this stuff and seeing what they were saying and excited about, and so it's really, really neat. I love all that stuff. But the trading thing, I'm not surprised. I want to know if that was actually good for anybody, if anyone actually did any trading on it, because that would be a good story, I think. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, there's one here as well. There's a mail call here, which, dear mail call, who is the better marksman, Snake Eyes or Flint? Question 2, does Flint fancy either Scarlet or Lady J? That is so English.
So English, fancying somebody.
Does he fancy?
Fancy was, oh man.
Let me see what the answer is, actually. The answer is, I tried to keep, because Flint, of course, is answering the letters. So he says, in relation to that, I tried to keep my personal feelings out of my work. Consequently, my relationship with both the ladies you mentioned is strictly professional.
Brilliant. What I love about not just the comics, but then the actual company and the branding and all that kind of stuff is I would write letters to Action Force, like mail away addresses and stuff. I would write to them thinking it was the HQ for Action Force and so on and so forth. So I would, you'd get those, it might be like a mail away for Special Corps or Super Trooper or something, and you'd get hold of an address, and I'd be like, right, I'm sending him a letter, and I'd write things like, and I designed this gym. It was an Action Force gym. And there's a couple of other different things I'd send them, and I would get replies on Action Force and G.I. Joe headed paper.
Wicked.
And it would always, and I've still got them. I've posted them on our Facebook page in the past. I've discussed them at length on episodes before, and I was just so amazed at the almost customer support. That it wasn't. I mean, it was they're pandering to kids effectively.
Yeah.
But I was amazed that I always get a response, and so I've got I think 5 or 6 letters back from Flint or Hawk, and I'm using air quotes as I do this because it was always someone from marketing or whoever was running that club that week or whatever. But I always found that really amazing, and that was one of the reasons I fell in love with this whole thing completely, because I almost felt like it was a real thing. It wasn't, I would almost fantasize that there would be fangs flying in, and I'd look out, because I lived on the coast. This is going to make me sound mental, but I lived on the coast in Munsley, this tiny little seaside town in Norfolk, and we were right on the cliff edge, so we had the most beautiful view of the sea. and there was a barracks on the side of the cliff near my house that we, long abandoned barracks, this huge concrete building on the cliff edge. And we'd use that as our Action Force HQ, and there would be homeless people living in it, probably doing crack and all sorts of stuff. And there was us as kids running around in our army gear, like being G.I. Joe characters, Action Force characters. And I would visualize the whale coming up on the beach, and sky strikers flying over. Whenever a plane flew past, in my head it was like a Rattler. It wasn't an A-10 that flew past. And things like that. And it was just, I don't know, it just made this world in my head, and it hasn't left me, because I'm still here talking about it years later. And I think that was one of the reasons I love this brand so much. So for them to do, to respond so well to the people that were sending this stuff in, just still blows my mind to this day.
Oh, very cool. Do we talk about Combat Colin?
Of course.
Do we let the US readers, listeners into the world of Combat Colin?
My favourite thing about Combat Colin was I think it's in his profile, something like that. One of his, because they did a funny Combat Colin profile, like they did with the Joes, with the Action Force team. And I remember vividly laughing my ass off as a kid to the thing of he applied for the Action Force team. They denied him. He applied again. They denied him again. He applied again. They nuked his bedroom. And I just found that so funny as a kid. I mean, it's dumb as all hell now, but I found that was the funniest thing to me as a kid. And that stuck with me as well, because I'm not sure if that's the exact quote, but it's along those lines. But who is Combat Colin for the audience?
It's kind of it's like a parody newspaper strip, isn't it, of a bumbling fat goon who lives with his mum, and he's got his mate Semi-Automatic Steve. Unreal. And he thinks he's military grade, but he's clearly not.
He has, and Lou Stringer was the guy that kind of drew him, and I think, did he write him as well?
Yeah. I've got Lou Stringer did me a zombified version of Combat Colin at a convention once.
He's lovely. I saw him at TFN last year.
Okay.
And I actually asked him if he'd want to be on the show to do an interview, and he said yes, and gave me his email. And I emailed him and haven't heard anything back since.
Okay.
So
follow up.
I will
follow up.
I think I might have done, but I'll do again, because I really want to get him on the show, because he's lovely as well in person. Really nice guy.
Yep.
Anyway, Combat Colin was hilarious. I actually used to look forward to that strip as well, just as much as I did the Action Force comic.
Now, kind of soaking it all in once again, it was such an amazing comic. You had that original UK material, you had the G.I. Joe reprint stuff, you had the sometimes you had the Shang-Chi stuff, then you had Combat Colin, which was a bit of nice light relief after everything you've experienced within, and such a great package, wasn't it? It rounded it off, because it was always at the back. You would never tell in the structure of the comic whether you would get the US stuff first, reprint stuff first, and then the UK stuff. Sometimes they flipped it around. You never knew where the tack page was going to be, or the letters page, but you always knew that Combat Colin would be there right at the end, kind of giving you the send-off.
I think that's why I prefer this particular format to the classic comic of just, here's your story, and then here's a ton of adverts for the company, and then away you go. It's nice on the vintage comics where you've got some of the vintage ads, but I kind of find that US structure of just the story and that's it, and that's all you get, is so short-changing people. And I love the format of just, like you say, all of those different things thrown together.
I mean, obviously the UK kind of has a history of that anyway. History of A, weekly comics, and B, anthology kind of comics.
Just out of interest as well, Chief, what are your favourite artists and writers? Because obviously
that's a good shout.
By picking out our standout stories along the way, we've done our top 3 of those by accident. So I mean, what are your favourite writers and artists?
Story-wise, I'll also just give a quick shout out to the story from 44, 45 and 46, the one where Destro loses his memory.
Oh, yeah.
And confronts Farouk, who has been a character.
Oh, yeah, he didn't die.
The series.
Surprise, he didn't die.
I actually really like that story, so that's cool. I'd say favourite artist, it's probably got to be between Kev Hopgood and Jeff Senior.
Big time.
And I thought about this a lot, and I went back and forth, and I'm going to be one of those really annoying people that sits on the fence, and I'm actually going to share this honour equally.
Yeah.
And that's not because I've just spoke to Kev Hopgood recently at all. I think growing up, I was definitely in the Jeff Senior camp as my favourite artist.
Yeah.
And his work on that's kind of the Transformers stuff that I kind of started reading. Transformers was when Simon Furman came on, and that's when Jeff was kind of doing all that stuff in the US book, and that's, you know, a real sweet spot for me of Transformers. And I think because of that, I was very fond of his Action Force work early on. But now, having reread these all again, I'm actually going to, like I said, I'm going to be a complete chump and be a fence sitter and say both.
That's fine. That's totally cool. I mean, for me, I have to throw Steve Yoel in there because
yes, of course,
like he is actually like quite. He's definitely an underrated artist, I think.
Yes.
Kev definitely gets the plaudits because he's a brilliant artist. And also Jeff Senior because of I suppose, not just because of what he's done with the Action Force stuff, but I suppose everything else since and before. Like, you know, he's got like that gravitas, Jeff Senior, where I feel like he's put to the top before we're actually looking at everything. You know, he's already kind of made his way up there before we've actually looked at anything.
Yes.
But for me, it's got to be Kev, then Jeff, then Steve. But that's just my top three.
And just mention you mentioned Steve, and I didn't speak about him when I was saying who my favourite was. But I'm doing a little side project called Every Story Ever, which I stole from the podcast War Rocket Ajax.
Right.
And those two guys basically are trying to, every comic they read, they put on a list and rank it against every other comic. And in effect are trying to review every comic ever. So I thought I'll do the same when I've got loads of comics that I reread and new ones that I buy. So every time I read a story, whether it be a single issue or a 6-issue arc, I'm going to put it on my master list.
Wow.
And try and so the list is now it might be about 1,200 stories.
I was thinking you were going to say like 26 or something.
No, I started cataloguing it last year, kind of at the beginning of 2018.
Wow.
So unfortunately, I've had 30 plus years of reading comics, and what I don't want to do is, I remember I read that comic 2 years ago. I know. So for example, Watchmen is not on the list because I haven't read it since I started compiling the list.
Right, I get you.
So I need to go back and read what I don't feel. I know how good it is. I've read it lots of times, but I want every story I put on the list to have been something that I've read recently.
Got you.
So it's missing lots of classics, but that's only not because I haven't read them, but because in my mind I want to be 100% sure where it ranks. So, for example, to get to my point, of the 12 or 1,300 stories I've ranked in the last year, The Red Seas is actually ranked number 4, and this is a 2000 AD strip written by Ian Edgington and drawn by Steve Yao.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a black and white kind of medieval seafaring pirate adventure.
I'm going to have to check that out.
It's available digitally on the 2000 AD shop, 2000 AD online in their shop. You can buy 2 volumes of it digitally.
Cool.
And that's how much I rate him as an artist, because it's number 4. Yeah, there you go.
I mean, he's great. Like, there's literally no two ways about it. Then, and again, it helps that they were doing that stuff, and it's formed my nostalgia as well. So that doesn't, it's hard. That's hard to break. That's hard to kind of come out of and look at something like critically, isn't it?
And in terms of writing, Simon Furman is the obvious choice, but I'm actually going to go with Mike Collins.
Oh, you've done a me again.
Oh, have I? He's probably better known as an artist, but I think some of the issues he wrote were really strong. Big
time. Rigged, for example. Yeah.
Yes.
And I like Ian Rimmer as well. I'm going to throw him in there too.
Okay, yep, good shout.
But I totally agree with you. Simon Furman does the same thing that Jeff Senior does on the art side. It's like he creeps up to the top before you've read anything. So I think it's a toss up between him and Mike for my top 2, and I threw Ian Rimmer in there just because I really like the Doppelganger story.
Yeah,
he was.
You mentioned that. Yeah.
Sorry, he was in that.
That's all right. We should probably close out. I know we've kept the listeners a long time, but hopefully they're well entertained.
It's only over 2 hours.
We should probably close out by mentioning, what happened when issue 50, the last issue of this run, kind of came about, because it wasn't the end of the story of Action Force. It actually went over and became a backup in Transformers, but also there was an Action Force Monthly strip.
Exactly, which I would love to cover with you on a different episode, in not in its in its entirety like we've done this one, but absolutely, yeah. We kind of, the 50 issues came to an end in the UK. We got, basically because of the bad sales, and then we got the monthly happened shortly afterwards, and we'll get into the details of all that stuff on the when we cross over again for Talking Force.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that. Now, unfortunately, I have not read those issues, and I claim to be a G.I. Joe Action Force fan, but I'm proving to be sadly lacking in certain areas. However, I am going to hunt down those issues, because when Action Force went into Transformers, then I didn't get Transformers Weekly at that point, because I had now fully transferred over to buying G.I. Joe, the US version.
Wow.
Because at that point, it was only US reprints being reprinted in the back of Transformers.
Yeah.
Only 5 or 6 pages at a time, as they had been in Action Force Weekly. But I had sought out all of the back issue G.I. Joe comics, and that was the only camp I was in then. So I never bought or even saw a copy of Action Force Monthly.
Wow.
And then when I went back to when I started collecting Transformers Weekly around issue 250, I don't know if it was probably G.I. Joe being reprinted, because for a time actually there was like Centurions, was there, or something else as a
Visionaries.
Transformers?
Wasn't it Visionaries?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So Action Force Monthly, was that published by Marvel UK as a UK-sized comic, or was it US-sized?
It was a US-sized. It was kind of like that kind of smaller kind of format.
Yes.
But again, there are some absolutely beautiful stories in there, and the artwork's fantastic in a lot of it. It's some of my favourite stuff to read, because again, it's like quite compact. And again, it's selling figures. There's one of my favourite stories, which I will obviously go into more detail, involves Outback and Psych Out, and it's just absolutely brilliant. And the Dreadnoks.
My mission then is to track down those issues, and we will definitely join forces again. The Mega Powers will ride again when we cover that on another special show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, mate, for this collaboration. It's been brilliant.
No problem. I am going to get you out on this. It's an Action Force pop quiz.
It's an Action Force pop quiz.
Flint and Lady J and Snake Eyes and Scarlet are on a double date. Now, as much as Flint wants to say that he doesn't let his personal relationships intrude on his work, and he's not seeing either of those ladies, I say he is.
Yeah. And
they're on a double date, and they go into the movies. They see that there's 3 movies being shown. What do they see? Do they see The Godfather Part 2? Do they see 4 Weddings and a Funeral? Or do they see Fast and Furious Part 7?
Wow, that is a good question. I would suggest, if they want to go see something good, then it's The Godfather Part 2. But if they want to go and see something, I think they avoid all 3 of those movies and they watch My Girl instead.
Big shout. I like it though. I like it.
I have no idea. I have no basis. There's no reasoning behind it. I think
the ladies pull rank, and they fancy a bit of a soppy one, and they go to 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
I thought you were going to say they fancy a soppy one, and they go see Fast and the Furious 7. Oh, I see what you mean. Know. You mean soppy in a different way. I get it.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, cool. It's been an absolute pleasure. We hope everyone out there has enjoyed it. Everyone should most definitely go and check out the Full Force podcast.
And everyone should most definitely check out Talking Joe's.
I mentioned this to you off air, but I've come to your podcast late in the day, so going back and catching up on past episodes, but I'm really enjoying it. So
I wouldn't if I were you. It's dangerous.
Okay.
No, I'm exactly this in a similar fashion. I wasn't like late in the game on your one, but I'm having to play some catch up, definitely.
Okay.
I'm loving it. I love what you guys do.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things I love doing. Why I love doing the podcast in the first place is because loads of people now are doing these lots of kind of different fan community kind of things, and when you don't have like a brand floating around really at the moment, especially with G.I. Joe kind of in a hiatus as such, I think the fans then kind of take things into their own hands in a way. And what's happened recently is we've seen this influx of incredible content. We get I've got to give a shout out to the Joe Berg guys. the guys in South Africa,
they're
G.I.
great
Joe Bug,
guys.
and Cujo, obviously, on the West Coast, and Steve, who I think is in Australia right now. It's a ridiculous. I mean, that's worse than what I have to put up with time zones. But what those guys are doing at the moment is incredible, and I love their YouTube. Playing with the Toys Sunbow episodes. At the moment, Blazing Sand Part 4 is on its way, so I'm really excited to see that. But
Excellent.
I love those guys to death. I love what you guys are doing. I love what the File Card podcast are doing. What Sunjoe Mind are back in the game now with Mike and Joe and Carson. What Carson does with 3D Joes. There's too many things to even... Plastic Battles, Paul Pamphilone, big shout-outs. But there's too many to even mention. I'm sorry if I've missed anyone out, because it is just brilliant at the moment. For if you're a G.I. Joe fan, there's stuff for you to listen to. It's great.
I think I echo everything you've said there, and I think we were a bit worried that we're dipping our toe not in someone else's pond, but there's other guys or everyone you've mentioned there who are doing great work. And,
Joe on Joe as well. Sorry.
Yes, of course, and we didn't want to feel like we were infringing on someone else's area of expertise or anything. But I think there's probably a place for everyone. So I'm
totally.
hoping, I like all the guys you mentioned, and I hope we can stand alongside you and all the guys as well.
Well, more so because we're just collaborating. So
yeah, we're the Mega Powers. You're still Hulk Hogan. I'm still Macho Man.
Why do I have to be Hulk? I'll be the Ultimate Warrior and tie off.
Okay,
I'll tie off all my blood flow to my muscles with
That's it. Do it.
sexy tassels instead.
Cool. Brilliant. So. I've had a good time, you've had a good time, the listeners have had a good time. Go and check out Full Force, go and check out Talking Joe, and we will see you for the next Talking Force special.
Talking Force!